right, so this is Huzzy. It looks like mostly all questions from him, really, except for one from Wayne. Interesting. The top 20 results for a brand name search with geolocated browser are already branded assets. Okay, let me restart that. If the top 20 results for a brand name search with a geolocated browser are already branded assets of that company, should we continue to build out branded Web 2s or should we keep our monthly deliverables as semantic links and press releases going forward? No, I would still, that's what our brand expander training is all about. Constantly want to be adding new branded and supporting assets, right? Again, it's talking about creating page URLs, right? So data points on the web, right? That have accurate information published about that business location, name, address, phone number, website, or some combination of those four data points. That is a citation. Whether it's structured or unstructured, it's still a citation, right? So published mentions of any of those data points, typically a combination of those data points, name, address, phone number, website, is a it's a reference, right? It's a citation. It's citing a source. And that the more of those that we can create, preferably on, platforms that have some sort of authority, the better it is. But it's not just about creating them. It's about making sure that Google is aware of them. That's what I call assisting with discoverability, right? We want to spoon feed that data. When I say Google, I mean the language models too, right? We want to make sure that those page URLs that have corroborating data or validating data about that particular branded business location are being found, recognized by Google, other search engines, AI, large language models, et cetera. Do you understand? And so that's what the brand expander training turned into. It used to be syndicating content. There used to be Syndication Academy, but the syndication component, when we were republishing the same content, kind of had a waning, like a declining of it didn't produce the effect that it did after, that it did originally when I kind of developed that process. But as part of the Syndication Academy training, we would go out constantly and find additional Web 2s, bookmarking sites, all different types of sites, document sharing sites, all those kind of things where we could create profiles, preferably with a link back to our primary website, but then also interlink those with other profiles, right? Where the business had, or the brand had, other profiles, other Web 2s, other assets where it had a branded profile. So we would identify the kind of better platforms and then create a profile on it with proper branding and interlinking to other profiles, okay, other assets. The whole point of that was you continue to keep building out these assets, whether you were publishing content to them or not. It was about creating this, expanding the brand's footprint, right? In SEO, everybody thinks brand, saying a footprint is a bad word. Well, it is in some cases, but in other cases, you want to expand or expand the footprint, which is what I was talking about with branded assets. So we eventually got rid of the syndication component of Syndication Academy and rebranded it as Brand Expander, because that was really the intent, was to continue just finding additional high authority type properties that you could create a profile on, optimize them fairly well, interlink them with other profiles. Then you take each one of those profiles and you add them into the sameAs attributes of the local business schema, and then you put them into the ID page. In the G sheet of the ID page typically is where I would recommend that you do it, with the hyperlinked, so concatenated URL with a search query or a keyword, right? That's what we teach. And then you have the embedded G sheet. So every time you create new branded and supporting assets, you want to extract that page URL and put that in the local business schema, the sameAs attributes, in the ID page. The G sheet typically is where we will put that. But then you would also, if it's a Google Business Profile, you also want to link out to those page URLs with Google Business Posts. Again, that gets Google to find them very, very quickly. So I'm not saying that you stop at when you got the first 2 pages of search results fully populated with assets or page URLs, external page URLs that are specifically referencing that company. And I probably should have started with this for more context for somebody that doesn't know what Huzaifa was asking about. One of the things that I teach is what I think is the bare minimum of branded location authority, like threshold, like the criteria for determining, and it's a very simple process. Use a browser geolocator. Okay, let me demonstrate this. I'm going to pause the screen just for one moment. I do want to demonstrate this because I think this is valuable. This is the first step in all my local SEO campaigns, period. I mean, full stop. This is my standard operating procedure, is we always start with determining what does Google understand about the branded business location. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. I use the Bright local SERP checker. All right. And then we would just put in a company name and we would then go search for it. So I don't know. Let's just let's pick something. Let's use now. I don't have a we'll use Albemarle Felling Pro. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and click Charlottesville, Virginia. So we're going to come here and put in the location first. Then we're going to add or search for a company name. So we're going to say Albemarle Felling Pro. So whatever your client's name is, or as a campaign that you're analyzing or whatever, you want to put the brand name in there. Albemarle. I better spell that correctly. Albemarle Felling Pro. Okay. And then what I do is I look for the first 2 pages of the search results to determine how well developed is the knowledge graph according to Google. This is only Google's data. Okay. But the bare minimum is the 16 out of 20 or 80% or greater out of the top 2 pages should be specifically assets referencing that particular branded business location, right? Why do I say branded business location? Because it could be a multi-location brand. And so there's kind of a little bit of some flexibility here in that if it is a multi-location brand and you geolocate the browser and then you do a brand search, notice down here, see how it's saying this is a search that was being performed from it's simulating a search being performed in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where this business is located, right? This is a virtual business, so to speak. But anyway, if it's a multi-location business, then as long as the top 2 pages are almost entirely populated with assets that are external assets, I'm not talking about if it's returning pages from the same domain. That's not from the actual company domain. That's not what I'm talking about. And if you have to, you can put in a minus and then put the domain, like minus domain, in the search, and it will actually remove any of those page URLs from the search results. I'm talking about external assets. Any sort of external assets that were page URLs on external domains that have accurate information published about the brand. Okay, remember, I prefer to see page URLs returned in the 80% or greater of the top 20 results, which would be 16 or more of the top 20 results should be page URLs that are specifically referencing that particular branded business location. That is the best. Like, in other words, if you have 80% or greater of external page URLs specifically referencing that particular branded location, when it's a geolocated browser that does then a brand search without like a particular modifier, like, city modifier or whatever, that's a very well-developed knowledge graph. But when it's if it's a multi-location business, then as long as the top 20 results are almost entirely populated with branded assets, or page URLs that are mentioning the brand, even if it's not that particular location, then I'll usually let that one slide and say, okay, well, at least the brand is well established, even if that particular branded business location is not. And that's still something we want to strive for, because again, if it's a multi-location business, when you have a geolocated browser, if Google is if Google is aware of those supporting assets that are particularly referencing this particular company, right, that are this specific company, then it should be returning those page URLs because they're the most relevant. Do you understand? So there's kind of like a sliding scale. There is the knowledge graph is underdeveloped to the brand is fairly well developed, but the particular branded business location is still underdeveloped to the branded business location is well developed. The knowledge graph is, does that make sense? And so that doesn't mean that just because you have 16 or greater out of the top 20 results branded or supporting assets that you should just then quit. It's like, oh, my work is done here. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. You should constantly be reinforcing, building more supporting assets, more references back to that branded business location on page URLs, and making sure that you are assisting with discoverability, because just creating those pages is not enough. Google is very inefficient at crawling the web because it is looking for literally needles in needles within a haystack of trillions and trillions of hay, strands of hay, or whatever you call it. I'm not a farmer, but you get what I'm saying? Like, in other words, Google is very inefficient at crawling the web because of the trillions of web URLs that it has to crawl to identify the needles in the haystack of those page URLs that have accurate information published about a particular branded business location. So we can assist as the marketer, SEO, whatever it is, we can help assist with that discoverability by basically spoon feeding that data back to Google and the language models through the three methods that I just described. Google Business Posts, that's how you can spoon feed that data back to Google very quickly. Go create or find a page on the web that has accurate information published about that Google Business location and link to it with a Google Business Post. That forces Google to crawl it and recognize, okay, there's corroborating data on this page that supports what we understand about this business location. Therefore, I'm going to pull that data point into the knowledge graph. We can help Google develop that very quickly. Guys, it's like this. If you and I were to go out and buy a puzzle, right, a jigsaw puzzle, and we could see what the image on the box is, right? We know what it's supposed to be, but we go home, we dump it out onto a table, and it's a bunch of scattered pieces. It's a mess, right? And we have to take our time to then start sifting and sorting through these pieces and organizing them properly. And as we start to find the appropriate pieces, organize them correctly, and start clicking, snapping them together, then a picture starts to emerge from that mess, right? And the more pieces we fit in there, the clearer or sharper that image becomes. It's the exact same thing with Google. It's almost a perfect analogy, because Google has a vague understanding of what the business, who the business is, what they do, and where they do it from how the GBP was optimized. But then it goes out and starts scanning, crawling the web, trying to identify those validating data points that corroborate that information. And so Google is very inefficient because it has to crawl through trillions and trillions of puzzle pieces to find the correct and appropriate pieces to then fit together so that that sharper or clearer image emerges from that mess of data. Do you understand? And that's exactly what it is that we're trying to do. So the minimum starting point for me, if I do a competitive, it's either going to be a competitive link analysis or a full SEO audit. Whenever I take on a new client, it's going to be the starting point's always going to be one of those two things. If I start on a competitive link analysis, and I'm always going to look at the on-page factors when I'm doing a competitive link analysis, and if I see that there's on-page issues or things that stand out that are likely causing performance issues, then that's when I'll then switch to doing a full SEO audit. And the first step of a full SEO audit, the very, very first bullet point, is doing a brand search with the geolocated browser to see if it pops a knowledge panel or that specific location at the top of a map pack if it's a multi-location business. The second bullet point then is getting a count of how many of the top 20 results are specifically branded at external page URLs referencing that brand, but preferably that particular branded business location. And if it's less than that, then it needs improvement. And then the third bullet point in the audit is then go check to determine if the campaign is assisting with discoverability. So what do? I go look at Google Business Posts. Are they being published consistently? And are they linking out to external assets? And that's something that very rare that I ever see from anybody other than our own students or members. Okay. Number two, I look at the schema and the local business schema to see if the sameAs attributes are being referenced there, or if they're at least or in the organization schema. They should be in the local business schema, not organization schema. But in any case, I'm looking just for sameAs attributes. And then also I look to see if they have a dedicated ID page. And once again, unless they're a member or a student or whatever of Semantic Mastery, they're likely not going to have an ID page either. And so that's why, getting back to the original question was, should we stop after you've gotten the top 2 pages populated with branded and supporting assets? Absolutely not. You keep building and building and building. So this one's not, I don't have a client for this location anyway. So, but this one's not doing bad, but it could be doing a little bit better. It's just slightly under that kind of threshold, if that makes sense. But this is just kind of an example to show you what I'm talking about. Okay. But no, you don't want to stop. Keep building. Always. The more of those that you create, the more brand authority you create. That is the number one most important thing. I talk about this all the time. The 2 most important things in local search, in my opinion, are branded location authority, number 1. Number 2, site efficiency, right? So if you get the branded location authority part right, you can have deficiencies in some of the other SEO areas, and you can still perform very well in local search. That's why you never want to stop building that branded location authority. So create additional supporting external assets, and then make sure Google and the language models are aware of them. And that's how you do it.